Hello, UCAR. Peter Christensen here, coming to you from the CEO's desk or somewhere near it. I've got, today's a special day, people. I will admit I was off by a year. I thought it was the 5th anniversary of these legal podcast or whatever we call them, videos. And it's actually the 4th, which is still pretty cool, but it's the actual day. It's the day. I don't know how or why I figured that out, but I did. So happy 4th legal podcast anniversary. And because it's the 4th and nothing screams to me for like Kreg Wagner. So, because he's the 4th best human being on this planet. At least Kreg. You would not.
4th choice? Is that what it is?
After making 3 phone calls, the 4th was no. Kreg was my first choice. He was my first choice when I thought it was the 5th anniversary. Which why we decided 5 is cool. 5 and 10. I don't know. That's a different topic for a different time. So Kreg's with us. Thanks for joining us, Kreg. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
This is fun. We'll do 5th. And maybe we'll make an even bigger deal of 5, if I can remember, next year. What's the date? 28th of March. I should just set a calendar appointment. So what we thought we would do, so Kreg and I have been friends for a while now, used to work together, and have done multiple of these videos for the UAR, for UCAR, together. We've been on legal panels. I don't even know how many times we've been on legal panels together. So this is fun. And believe it or not, we spend like a half hour before we ever hit record actually talking about legal stuff, like legal questions. And so we really do enjoy this stuff. So I'm gonna dive right in. What I thought was, 4 years on this doing these videos, and I thought, what are timeless? Like sometimes we are scrambling to get new topics. We always love when a new form comes out. We had that new form. We're going to get a new iteration of the property condition disclosure soon, in the next couple months, probably, right? And that's always fun, and we love it because we have something to talk about. But the truth is, we get timeless topics that are timeless throughout the years that we talk about. I'm coming up in 2 months, will be 15 years with the realtors, and there are topics that have come up all 15 of those years. And so we're going to talk about a few of those. And I wanted to talk first, and maybe we just get stuck on this one. I don't know, because there's a lot that goes into it, but it's use of the property. So there's an idea in the law that you give certain private property is private property. You can't trespass. You have to be given permission to enter someone else's property. Now, we give lots of permissions, but those permissions can be limited in scope. So that's how you at some point say, you've crossed the line. Like I told you could come over. That doesn't mean you can move here and sleep here and live here. It's time to go home now. Or even say use of the property. It's okay to, for instance, use my property to show buyers, but it's not okay for you to have your Super Bowl party at my property. That's not within the scope of permission or invitation I've given you. So maybe, Kreg, you could talk about some issues through the years that have come up with that. And we've done very little prep on this, people. So this is really raw, us just throwing. We're not very, I don't know, maybe you're good at scripted, Kreg. I tend to not follow it if we have one. So I'm throwing this at you.
Sure.
Shoot from the hip.
Well, where I'm seeing calls, and usually these are ethics complaints or complaints to the Division of Real Estate when it comes to use of the property, is typically with access. So for example, if a seller has given their listing agent permission to market the property, oftentimes there are specific instructions attached with that marketing. Authorizations from the seller as to when other agents and buyers can see the property or access the property. Oftentimes it's by appointment, right? Even if the property is vacant. So I've seen a number of ethics complaints and stipulations at the division where real estate agents have accessed the property without proper permission. You know, some of the worst ones I've heard, you know, going through windows and things like that, to other instances where the two parties are under contract already, where buyer and seller are under contract and everything's moving towards settlement and eventually closing, and somehow the keys get delivered to the buyer before closing. And remember, you know, this is kind of not a pet peeve, but it's just a clarification. There's a difference between settlement and closing. When you sign, when you bring your funds to the table, not the proceeds of a new loan, you're settling. But closing is really funding and recording. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, you just have to be careful not to get lazy and give the keys prematurely, because technically it's not the buyer's property yet. They should really receive keys after it closes. And so those two issues, accessing the property without proper authorization or contrary to authorization, and then receiving keys prematurely are some of the areas that I've seen some potential violations when it comes to use and access.
Another interesting one that pops up has to do with, so now the buyer owns it. So it has actually closed, right? They have title, funds delivered, so they now own the property. But as part of the deal, they have agreed to allow the seller to stay in the property for another 3-4 weeks. Let's just say 4 weeks. Sellers, you know, home is not quite finished, new construction. It's a common story right now. And so they agree, we'll let you stay in there. But now they're excited. I heard one broker say, yeah, buyers are always super excited for that arrangement when they're under contract, but they lose their excitement once they own the property. Like their gusto for, sure, seller, stay as long as you want. So now they own the property. They want to get a jump on some remodeling. They've got keys, and I don't see why they should not have keys. It's their property. What are the problems that come with, well, you know, sure, stay seller, but you're going to live around us remodeling now?
Right. It's typically not the expectation the seller has in essence, renting back the property. So I think it depends. And I know that's a very attorney answer, but it really depends on what have the two parties agreed to. If this is a plug for the UAR short-term leaseback addendum, but it does set those expectations. Not only does it set the expectations for the duration and how much, but it also sets the expectation for access to the property. Namely, when a buyer, or in this case, the landlord, can access the property of the seller or the tenant. And we did make that adjustment to make it very clear that for any sort of non-emergency related issues, the buyer needs the permission of the seller. Again, kind of landlord-tenant relationship, because we wanted to respect the rights of the seller, not to be inconvenienced with contractors and remodeling unless they've given their consent to. So certainly if both parties agree that there can be remodeling and you know, bids and things of that nature, great. I mean, that's fantastic. Just spell it out. If you don't have it spelled out, then using the UAR short-term leaseback addendum would certainly set that expectation so that if the buyer does want that access, they now know that they need to ask for permission, and that's just a point of negotiation at that point as to when or how frequently that would happen.
Excellent. So another variation of that, no leaseback, but prior to closing, some point under contract, you know, buyer is maybe moving into the in-laws basement for a short term, and can't really put all their stuff there, and they're going to a smaller space. But seems like a pain for like 2 weeks to rent a storage unit. I got all this junk that Americans love. We love our junk, and that's why they're buying the house with the 8-car garage. They have 2 cars, but then 6 cars worth of stuff, garage worth of stuff. So there can't be any problem with the buyer just moving some stuff in early, right? Just maybe fill in one of the bays of that new garage early. No problems with that, right?
Yeah, zero problems with that, right? And hopefully the subtitles show our sarcasm with that. And we've had requests for forms dealing with early access to the property. So allowing a buyer to move in before the close of the transaction. I mean, it's not illegal. It certainly can be done, but it's got to be done in writing and make it very clear to both parties what exactly are the expectations. The problems that I see and certainly have had on the hotline are where there's zero writing. Right. And when that happens, if nothing goes wrong, then it probably is a non-issue. Right. But people don't call the hotline when there are non-issues. It's usually, well, seller now wants to cancel the contract. And now the 2 parties aren't dealing with each other amicably. And you have the buyer's stuff in the seller's garage, and it's not the buyer's property yet. So you can see where things can quickly go south. And you know, it just isn't ideal to have that situation where then the blame starts to hone in on the actual realtors or real estate agents that were helping facilitate that transaction. So probably the best piece of advice that I could give with that is just, as the realtors, just try to make it clear to your clients that having things in writing is ideal. And if it starts to get more complicated and the realtor feels comfortable drafting, because again, this could be, pretty legal in nature, is to bring in someone that does have that experience. Bring in an attorney. And I recognize there's some costs associated with that, but the short-term cost may help avoid any sort of long-term problems. Because I don't think anyone foresees problems when they're allowing a buyer to access the property early, but they happen. They just do. And trying to avoid that before it becomes a pretty contentious issue is really the point behind it.
Excellent. And maybe we'll end on this one. And that is, this one doesn't have a great, I think the law is somewhat unsettled on this. And that is, so we referenced, the scope of the use of the property, and there's so many more topics we could go into that just keep coming to mind with this issue of use of the property. But one that pops into my mind is recording devices. I mean, we know some of the crazy things that people have done with supposedly vacant properties because there are often cameras in them or audio recording devices in them. And now anybody used to have to be kind of that, a little bit of a fringe mind to be wiring cameras and stuff. Now they're just so easy to pop up, and they're small and you can put them anywhere. And, there's still some question as to whether you should post it somewhere on the front. I know some attorneys are pretty strong on that. Like, I think you can't do that. You can't record unless you have it posted. I tell people just expect that there's a recording device because so many houses have the cameras around. And so what are your thoughts, and what do you tell people on the hotline when they come across this? People will talk about the property. People will talk about maybe sometimes their offer, what their offer might be, what their parameters, things they love and hate about the property. And they'll have these discussions on the front porch right under the camera that's recording.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. If I'm a buyer's agent and I'm helping buyers walk through a property, I just set that expectation. right? Look, we just need to expect that we're being recorded, you know, so that we just need to be careful in our dialogue for sure. Because you do want to make sure that you're not saying something that may alienate the seller for whatever reason. You just have to be careful. Now, from a best practice, I mean, certainly a seller letting potential buyers walking through that, look, there are recording devices, and making them aware, and maybe it's part of the security system, because, you know, there is that interest there. You're right. There is some unsettled questions in my mind about expectation of privacy when someone's walking through, audio versus visual, what is allowable, you know, is one wiretapping, is one not? I mean, I could think of a number of ways that you could potentially alleviate that, but it does place a number of things in play. Like, you could get permission slips signed at the beginning before someone walks through. You could, I mean, I'm just trying to think of ways that you could cover yourself absolutely, but I know that that's not happening. But the idea of making buyers aware that the seller has these things, and then certainly having a dialogue with your seller, letting them know, hey, some of these things are unsettled. And so just wanted to give you some information about the idea of recording, and maybe some best practices if you're planning on recording anyone. So you're right, it is somewhat unsettled, but I think you can try to, as a buyer, make sure that you're aware that that is a possibility. It just in the age that we're living in right now.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the expectation of privacy, because I think that's probably the standard a court would use in that instance. Is
right.
If you're walking through somebody else's house, is it reasonable for you to think that you're going to be given complete privacy and not have any conversations overheard? And so, yeah, good stuff, Kreg. Oh, there's so many more things we could go into with keys, loaning keys, use of property, and yeah, all kinds of different scenarios. But
I mean, yeah, use of property. I mean, advertising. I mean, are you advertising that it can be used as a rental? Are you advertising that, hey, this zoning may be changed in the future?
Non-conforming use. Yeah, you're perpetuating that it's an illegal use of the how many people can be there in a college town.
Sure.
Another one, recording, taking pictures of the property, posting those. Is that allowed? Is it not? So many topics we could go into, but we're out of time, people. I don't know why I'm teasing you. We're out of time. We're not talking about those. So awesome. Thank you so much, Kreg, for joining us today. We always appreciate your wisdom, and love having you on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's always good to be back.
Do you like how I added in like a pause after everything I said, just to not let you know if you should jump in yet or not? Should I say thanks?
I loved it.
Oh, it's good stuff. Okay, so thank you. It's been I love making these videos. So it's 4 years. It's just flown by. I couldn't believe it's been that long. And please, we're always looking for topics. Leave us a comment, and we can try to hit these topics in the future. So thanks for tuning in. Oh, I gotta give my disclaimer. Remember, this is legal information only. This is not specific legal advice. If you need specific legal advice, please contact your attorney. Thanks for tuning in.